Alright, y'all, what's up? I'm gonna throw my hat into the ring in the Shanks versus Mihawk debate. I really didn't want to make this video at first, but it's gone on so long, and I kind of just want to get my thoughts out there. So, yeah, I'm gonna make my own video on it. So the pillar that the Mihawk is stronger than Shanks sentiment is built on is the narrator title saying that Mihawk is the strongest swordsman in the world. That everything stems from that point. If that doesn't exist, the argument doesn't really exist because Mihawk is nearly featless. So the first question is, are the narrator's thoughts and comments trustworthy? And I think for the most part, they are. There are some situations, though, where they aren't. So, I think the first and most obvious one is the introduction to Whitebeard. Whitebeard is introduced as the strongest man in the world. While he's hooked up to several IVs, he's drinking. He's got people around him, he's got nurses around him taking care of him. I think in this situation, Whitebeard is likely not the strongest man in the world. I do think he's probably a top tier. But strongest man in the world is tough. Maybe we can take Emu out of the picture, because maybe they're not human. We don't really know that for sure. We kind of do, but not like for sure. Okay, then we have Whitebeard over Shanks. We have Whitebeard over Mihawk. We have Whitebeard. Oh, this is old sick Whitebeard that we have over Kaido, who Kaido was coming to this fight to take advantage of the opportunity and, either kill Whitebeard or be killed in a battle. So there's kind of debate to whether which one could be stronger in that situation. But we still have Whitebeard over. I mean, even Loki. It could be a question here. So I think it's definitely questionable in that case. And then we have the Kaido introduction, which kind of introduces the way that the narrator can specifically talk about the worldview aspect of like what people think in their titles. Here he says, people say in a one-on-one fight, always bet against Kaido, or bet on Kaido. No one's stronger. This pirate is said to be the strongest creature alive. Okay. So it's kind of introducing the idea that the narrator, if they are using other people's thoughts, they might say it. Which, there could be debate to say that Mihawk, as the world's strongest swordsman, is what other people think, or that is what the perceived notion of the world. This Kaido introduction kind of is lightly refuting that, because the narrator specifically states in that case that they are talking about the other people's view. There's some other cases though. For example, Law being introduced without the D in his name. I don't think that's like a strong case or anything, but it is showing that the narrator is willing to withhold information from us. And I think probably the biggest example is the introduction to Saint J. Garcia Saturn, the highest authority in the world, one of the five elders. We know that obviously the five elders are not the highest authority in the world. That is something that the people of the world believe, though. The Marines very frequently in Egghead refer to the five elders as the highest authority in the world. So I think that kind of proves that there are cases where the narrator is not specifically, or is talking about the worldview aspect. They're talking about how the world perceives the characters without specifically stating that they are, like they did in Kaido's introduction. Okay, so now we've established that the narrator titles may or may not be trustworthy. I think in the Mihawk case, maybe just for the sake of the argument, we can take it to be true, because without that being true, there is no argument, right? So from there, how important is strength in the One Piece world? We've seen that strength is actually not, the key factor in deciding. Maybe it's the key factor in deciding a fight. However, it's not the only factor that's deciding fights in the One Piece world. Yeah, I've seen a lot of arguments, refer to him, Mihawk, I should say, as he's referred to as the strongest swordsman, meaning that in all aspects he is stronger. I'm not exactly sure I agree with that. I do think that he is the strongest swordsman. If that's just what it says, I don't know that means that his Conqueror's Haki is stronger, that his observation is stronger, observation Haki is stronger. I don't feel like we can really say in that case, but I do think that he is, the pinnacle of swordsman. He probably has like some of the highest base stats in One Piece, likely higher base stats than Shanks does, and certainly the highest level of armament Haki in the series, if not in the series, very, very high. And obviously, it's extremely likely, almost confirmed, that he has Conqueror's Haki coding, and is probably extremely proficient in that as well. But how important is strength? That we don't. It's just something that it doesn't always determine the outcome of the battle. For example, Enel is stronger than the entire Straw Hat crew combined in Skypiea, but he loses that fight, right? I mean, that's just like the most obvious example. So strength is definitely important, but there are other factors, like, Shanks being the observation Haki killer is probably something that is going to be important in a fight, right? And the next point I want to make is that who actually cares about this title? Who cares about the World's Strongest Swordsman title? Because I don't think it's anyone in the One Piece world. The only person, or the only people that care about this title are like the people, right? Mihawk is referred to as the World's Strongest Swordsman by like fodder Marines very frequently. Those are the people that call him the fodder, or who call him that. People are not really, no one of like worth is actually calling him that. And no one is striving for that title besides Zoro and maybe Vista. Vista kind of implies that he wants to be the world's strongest swordsman by defeating Mihawk in a fight, but it's not really outright stated. I think maybe we can assume that he does want to be there. But yeah, no one's really going after this title. There's no one in Wano that talks about being the world's strongest swordsman. No one from Zoro's village is really talking about it besides Kuina and Zoro. Yeah, you would think that if this was such like a prestigious title, there would be, a lot more people kind of like going after it. Kind of like the King of the Pirates / getting the One Piece kind of thing. I also wanted to quickly mention, in terms of the World's Strongest Swordsman title, I kind of think that this is a narrative tool to set up Zoro's goal, right? I don't really know if this is necessarily like an end-all be-all statement that we should be considering for the next 1100 chapters. I kind of just think that this plays into Zoro's goal, and it gives him something to do, and something to look forward to. I think that is the main purpose of introducing Mihawk as the world's strongest swordsman. He does get referred to as the world's strongest swordsman later on, which has nothing to do with Zoro's goal, right? So, maybe that's not the case, but I do think that the original mention of this has a lot to do with giving Zoro a goal. So that's kind of all the points I wanted to make about the World's Strongest Swordsman title. I think it's probably relevant. However, you know, there are some caveats that I mentioned. Next, I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about this too much, really. I really don't. But is Shanks a swordsman or not? You know, he's a sword. He's probably a swordsman. The thing that makes him, you know, that people may think that he's not, is that his swordplay doesn't really involve any sort of technique, any sort of skill, or anything like that. Every sword attack that Shanks has ever used is just one powerful hockey slash from his sword. And if you look at his sword, at least from what I've seen in the animated manga, his sword is not imbued with hockey. Like he's not infusing his sword with hockey. He's sending out a hockey blast with his sword. Right. I think that I don't know. I don't want to talk about this too much because I really do think that he uses a sword. He's probably a swordsman, right? But I think it may be just like the title that is flawed, Mihawk's title, rather than whether or not Shanks is a swordsman. But also, Roger is the exact same way, where his divine departure does not involve using armament hockey to coat his sword, or Conqueror's hockey to actually coat his sword. They're just sending a wave. They're basically like emitting Conqueror's hockey, right? Do I think that makes him not a swordsman? I think he's likely still a swordsman. The real distinctions are like Mihawk, Sora, and Vista are very clearly swordsmen, right? They are swordsmen in a completely different way. And, you know, I think that's kind of up to the reader to interpret whether or not they want to refer to Mihawk, Sora, Vista distinctly as swordsmen versus, you know, people like Shanks, people like Roger. But I do think the argument goes both ways, right? Because, you know, if Shanks is a swordsman, right, that's cool. And then there's people like Kizaru. Kizaru kind of primarily uses a sword. One of his main attacks is a sword. He uses swordplay. He engages in a lot more swordplay than even Shanks, I would say. He actually swings his sword and uses his sword for, you know, parries and blocking and such, right? So I'd even argue that he's more of a swordsman than Shanks is. But being more or less of a swordsman, does that make you not a swordsman? I'm probably not, right? I don't want to talk about this too much. I also do want to say that King versus Zoro, it's, you know, very obviously a pointed distinction is made between a swordsman and not a swordsman. Right, there's a pointed distinction between the two. For the sake of this argument, though, I don't really think it's worth talking about whether or not Shanks is a swordsman. I think it's just simply there's too much going on here to say whether or not he is. I think other things are more important to focus on. I also don't want to talk about this too much. The Marineford downscales for Mihawk, I mostly want to ignore it. Him saying that he's going all out against Luffy and, you know, not really being able to stop him or easily stop Vista. I mean, obviously, if he's going all out, he should be able to easily stop Luffy, easily stop Vista, given that he's stronger than Shanks, right? I also, you know, in the Marineford situation, why are the admirals not, or admirals, vice admirals, anyone, why are they not upset at Mihawk for not going all out? Because they specifically mentioned to, you know, other warlords like Boa Hancock, why are you not going out? Why are you not going all out? Right? Why are you not doing the most that you can here? And if Mihawk is stronger than Shanks, he very clearly should have been doing more in this fight. You know, if he has Conqueror's hockey in the same way Shanks does, he could be specifically targeting a lot of the Whitebeard pirates and knocking them out. But you know, I don't want to talk about it too much. because I think Marineford downscaled a lot of people, and it's just not really worth going into, to be honest. I think the main thing that is worth mentioning from Marineford is that Mihawk is accepting Vista's challenge, right? Mihawk is accepting Vista's challenge because he knows that Vista is weaker than him, right? He's not going out, he would never go out and challenge Vista. He knows that he's stronger than him. But Mihawk is accepting the challenge and meeting Vista at his level. The same way he met Zoro at his level, where he brings out his smallest blade and fights him at his absolute lowest, the weakest he can be. So he's accepting a challenge from someone weaker and meeting them at their level. So next we're going to go into the Viva Card data book. The first thing I want to talk about here is that he looks forward, this sentence here, he looks forward to the day a Swordmaster will emerge to surpass even his rival, Red-Haired Shanks. Okay, I do want to start by saying, I'm analyzing this in English. I don't know Japanese well enough to analyze it in Japanese, so there may be nuances that I'm missing here, but I'm going to analyze this sentence in English, because that's what I've got. So he will to surpass even his rival, Red-Haired Shanks, even his rival. I think that heavily implies that Mihawk is weaker than Shanks, right? If you wanted to imply that Mihawk was stronger than Shanks and he's waiting for someone to be stronger, I think what you would say is he looks forward to a day a Swordmaster will emerge to surpass his rival, Red-Haired Shanks, right? But it says to surpass even his rival, Red-Haired Shanks. Mihawk is someone that challenges people to get stronger. If someone emerges that is much stronger than Shanks, he would challenge them and attempt to learn from them, and then he can, level up and be stronger than Shanks, right? I just think that's not how it would be worded if they were trying to imply that Mihawk is stronger than Shanks here. I also want to say, or talk about the sentence that Mihawk, he trained relentlessly for many years, challenging more and more powerful foes until he had no more worthy challengers. Okay. So Mihawk challenges people that are stronger than him to get better and better. That's how he acquired his strength. So at this point, Mihawk will accept challenges from those that are weaker than him, and he will challenge those who are stronger than him. Okay. And I think that goes back into the other point where he wants someone to be even stronger than Shanks so he can challenge them and gain strength in that way, because I think he's clearly hit a wall challenging Shanks. So it's going to go into chapter 96, where Mihawk is confronting Shanks on the island that they're staying on, the Red-Haired Pirates. And when Mihawk arrives, Shanks says, "I'm not in such a good mood right now, but have you come for a fight?" Right? He's assuming that he's coming for a fight. I think that implies that Mihawk has come to Shanks to challenge him at least once. I kind of think it implies that he's done this more than once, but it means that he's done this at least once, right? And, they're challenging people, each other back and forth. I don't really feel like that's the case, because Shanks is not really the kind of guy that goes out and looks for challenges for, random duels to prove that he's stronger than other people. That's not really what he's about. He kind of has like a big picture worldview where, he'll go and meet Kaido to stop him from coming to Marineford. He'll go to Marineford to stop them from ending the world, kind of thing. Yeah, so that's kind of what he travels. That's how he moves, right? He's not really moving to prove that he's stronger than anyone. At least, as far as we've really seen, right? So then the question is, why is Mihawk challenging someone that is weaker than himself, right? I think we can kind of discard this bit about as if I'd want to settle things with a man with only one arm, as Shanks just lost his other arm. I think that's just friendly banter. They very clearly know each other, and I think the only way that even has relevance is that if Mihawk knows about the Abyss contract and Shanks lost his arm with the Abyss contract and now he can't beat Mihawk. I think that's the only case where that, this is even like relevant at all. Otherwise, I think this is just like, friendly banter. But, back to the point, why would Mihawk challenge someone weaker than himself for a second time, a third time, a fourth time? Why have they had multiple duels, right? Mihawk has shown that he challenges someone and beats them, levels up and moves on, and then he will accept challenges from those that are weaker than him. Mihawk is not the kind of guy to fight people that are weaker than him by choice. He's not approaching people that are weaker than him and fighting them. Mihawk is someone that fights to get stronger, and that's really all he fights for. He doesn't really have a cause, besides the fact that he just wants to be the strongest swordsman in the world, and he wants to prove that he's at the pinnacle. So yeah, I think this scene in particular really heavily implies that Shanks is stronger than Mihawk based on the context of this scene and what we know about Mihawk, what we know about Shanks. Okay, so next I kind of want to talk about how I think they compare to each other and maybe how a fight would play out. Like I said before, I think Mihawk, as the strongest swordsman in the world, has a strong case to have stronger, just like base stats, base stamina, attack power, speed, than Shanks. There's a strong case for that, and I think there's an even stronger case for Mihawk having the strongest armament haki in the series, right? It's kind of implied. I think there's a lot of people thinking that the Black Blade has a lot to do with armament haki, maybe has something to do with Conqueror's haki coding. Not exactly sure. We don't exactly know how this happens. But either way, we've seen the way Zoro fights by coding his swords in armament haki. It seems like Mihawk has exceptional, if not the strongest, armament haki in the series, or at least armament haki coding. And I'm sure his Ryo is, his advanced armament is just as strong as that, right? I also think there's a case for Mihawk to have the strongest or stronger Conqueror's haki coding than Shanks, just by virtue of the way that they fight, right? It's kind of the same with Zoro. When you see Zoro fighting with his swords and using Conqueror's haki, he's imbuing with armament haki, and then it kind of seems like Conqueror's haki on top of that. And when Shanks is fighting, you don't see that armament haki coding. You kind of just see the blast of Conqueror's haki, kind of like an emitter from Hunter x Hunter, if bear with me. Whereas Mihawk and Zoro seem to be coding their swords with that Conqueror's haki, and doing damage in that way, right? Where I think Shanks is stronger is definitely his Conqueror's haki mastery. He's very clearly can send his Conqueror's haki very far away. He's got a haki-taki, scaring admirals from very long distances. I think he very clearly has high mastery of Conqueror's haki, and I think his will is likely stronger. We know that Conqueror's haki has a lot to do with the will of the user, right? Shanks wants to save the world. Shanks wants to protect people in the world, the entire world. Shanks goes from one edge of the world to another, protecting people. Going to see Kaido, stopping him, coming back to Marineford the next day, stopping him. Whereas Mihawk only really cares about being stronger, right? And I think that Mihawk is going to lose to Zoro in the end, because Zoro has something to fight for that's more than just himself, something that's bigger than himself. Zoro has found reasons to fight, right? Mihawk has no real reason to fight. Mihawk just wants to be strong. He fights to fight. He fights to get stronger. Zoro fights to get stronger, but he can't lose. Zoro cannot lose because he told his captain that he will not lose again, right? He's got a reason to fight. He fights for the Straw Hats. And in the same way, I think Shanks has something to fight for. Shanks is fighting for the world. He knows more about the world. He's seen higher peaks in the world. He's seen the top end of the world. He's seen what Imu does to people like Harold. Maybe Mihawk's seen that too, but we just don't know. And we know for sure that Shanks has, and he's seen higher peaks. He's seen stronger people. And I think this is just like the biggest point, is that Shanks is the observation hockey killer, right? He negates future sight. Future sight being like, one of, if not the most important distinctions in fights at the highest level. People that do and do not have future sight are very far in between each other. Luffy before future sight against Katakuri is no issue for Katakuri. Once he learns future sight, the fight gets a lot closer, right? And I've seen people say that Shanks's observation hockey killer technique, negating future sight, is not going to work against the top tiers. And I just, if that's the case, what is the point of the ability, right? Why would Shanks need to remove future sight from people that are weaker than him? Like if Shanks is fighting Katakuri, does it matter if Katakuri has future sight? No, it doesn't matter that Katakuri has future sight. He's getting slammed. Shanks does not need to take away the future sight from Katakuri, right? That's a fight that he's going to win regardless. I think this is a huge boon to him in fights where they're equal, right? They're equal. Negating future sight of an opponent that's equal to him is going to allow him to win fights that he otherwise, might lose to someone that is stronger than him, right? Mihawk being stronger than him might be the case, but if Shanks has future sight, if Shanks can see the future and he's already as strong as he is, what is Mihawk going to be able to do if he can't see the future, right? And like I said, I've seen people say that, Mihawk is like the clairvoyant one or whatever, and this ability is not going to work on him. But like I said, I just don't understand what the point of the ability is in the first place if that's not the case. Why would he have that ability? It's kind of similar. Maybe you'd say it's similar to like regular Conqueror's hockey. What's the point of knocking people out that are extremely weak? And I think there is a point to that ability. It gives you a 1v1 versus other like Conqueror's hockey users or someone strong. You can, just to knock out the fodder, right? You don't have to actually waste energy on the fodder. You just knock them out and then move on, right? Anyone that's weak is not important to this fight. I'm fighting you. It's me and you. So there's kind of like some sort of like utility for that ability, right? We saw Luffy knock out 1,000 people, 1,000 fishmen with it, right? Which was a very useful ability. We don't have to fight all of those guys now. We don't have to worry about people sneaking up on you or sneaking up on your friends, right? They're just knocked out. They're done. Yeah, I also want to quickly add the just Kaido talking about who he thinks can defeat him, with Odin, Whitebeard, Roger, Rocks, and Shanks being on that list. I think he almost certainly knows who Mihawk is. Maybe they've never fought, so maybe he doesn't know. But yeah, I do think it's like kind of worth mentioning that there are very strong Conqueror's hockey users on this list that are not Mihawk. But also, I could definitely see Oda not wanting to spoil the fact that Mihawk has Conqueror's hockey in this way, rather saving it for like a bigger moment, which, through all of this, we're assuming that in the first place Mihawk has Conqueror's hockey, because if he doesn't, there's no fight, right? So yeah, I just wanted to throw my hat into the ring with this argument. I really think that Shanks would be winning this fight, regardless of the fact that Mihawk may be the stronger swordsman. I think Shanks is winning the fight based on his Conqueror's hockey mastery and being the observation hockey killer. Let me know what y'all think. I'm down to talk about this more. And maybe I can go more in depth in another video. I kind of wanted to make this a little shorter, a little quicker, and unscripted, and just kind of talk about it and have a conversation. So yeah, feel free to respond, and I'll talk to whoever in the comments about this. Yeah. Hope you all have a great day, or night, or sleep, or whatever you're doing. I hope you have the best of it. Thanks.